is somewhere.
Video, when our friends like to talk privately.
Oh.
We are trying to mess with that.
But I think they're struggling with that. Because I'm going to see like what the win would be for services.
No, I completely understand. I think that should be a better focus.
Okay, we need to get started again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We'll debrief. Like if you're free for a call at 1 on... I'm just kidding.
I'm still going to be up because I still have homework to do.
Yeah, I know. Oh my
Thank you. There's places to sit down.
Anybody for this? No?
Well, it's covered in color. That's over there. Sorry.
Like I'm younger than you. You're younger than I. I don't know about that. I'm like, it's been so long. I was like, I know. I was like, I'm going to have this much grade the last time I read
Hey. Oh, you guys are so smart.
They're coming.
Watch out for all the Okay, we're going to go back to our conversation that we agreed to talk about the bookstore. I think that was your motion.
What do you want to say? Time store.
Time store, yes, okay. I've had a suggestion for one board member that we limit our comments to 3 minutes. I'll leave that to the board to give me guidance on.
Is it 3 minutes?
Yeah.
In total?
Well,
Per comment? Per point?
We're not gonna test that as well, are we? I mean, we're gonna do something tonight.
This is like a hugely important issue. I feel like we can't.
Okay. Unless I get a motion to limit our comments to 3 minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that the board has its discretion to speak freely. So we have a proposal from the college to outsource the Titan bookstore. And in fact, we have a motion on the floor to do that. I'm sorry, I can't remember. Did we actually vote on the motion?
No.
Okay.
We're in discussion. Yeah.
Okay, so we're in discussion. Yes.
So I know that there was the Barnes and Noble Town Hall. There were some comments about it made during public comment. I actually would like to hear from the administration on kind of some of the issues that were discussed at the town hall, concerns that were brought up by those who attended, and Barnes and Noble's response to those concerns. If we could get a debrief on that to start, would be great.
Well, I know I saw Brian at one of them. I think you were at both of them. Is that correct?
That's correct, and Paul was at the first one. I thought we had very good conversations. I think there were a lot of questions about OER, and Barnes and Noble again stressed that they would that there would be academic freedom for faculty, and they could choose to adopt the materials they were currently adopting. We also had conversations about what they're calling an enhanced OER, which our staff felt really wasn't a true OER, and that was not the language they would use to describe the platform. It is reduced cost. It's a $25 platform, but it certainly isn't an OER. And I think that really resonated with the Barnes & Noble folks who agreed that in the true meaning of an OER, that might not be it. Really what we're talking about and that cost is a cost savings piece. We had excellent student participation in the second forum. We talked a little bit about disciplines adopting books together, or faculty's right to, within a discipline, to adopt different books for the same courses. I thought it was a healthy, good conversation. I think people left with a better understanding of what they did. There are multiple possibilities for us to look at different services. The one we've explored the most, and the one that the college has invested the most time in, is having forums and a board presentation for Barnes and Noble. Again, tonight's vote would be to outsource a current service, and that would be the bookstore.
Thank you. I see Phil.
So I have a question. How many librarians do we have helping and researching and kind of promoting OER?
We're very fortunate to have one full-time librarian devoted to promoting OER on campus and to furthering our cause in increasing the number of sections and disciplines that use OER. That's Maggie Wright. You've heard from her many times. I would say, while that's her primary role, we have many other librarians and many faculty and staff heavily devoted, and managers to promoting and encouraging the use of OER on this campus.
Thank you, Paul. So then,
You're welcome.
I feel that Maggie has really done an exceptional job to making this OER accessible to our students already. How much has she saved, or let's see, how could we say then? How much has the bookstore, in a way, saved that student or those students? Like, how much has it cost in potential profit for our Titan bookstore?
Well, I can tell you this. I believe, and I could be corrected, I think that our OER efforts currently save our students about $200,000 per term.
Okay. Okay.
We usually say like $250.
I like it even better, $250.
So we're saving our students, right? So the Titan store is not making that money, and we are hiring librarians to do that job, to save money for the students. That's accessibility. That's awesome. But then also, when we're looking at it in a budget sense, like, are we not double dinging the Titan store. Both we're expecting them to provide this service. We're hiring them, so we're paying somebody to do this work. And they are fulfilling their duty, but then also we're saying, oh, but you're not making enough money, right? I just want to go on record here and say that I do not support outsourcing to Barnes & Noble. I think that we have a lot of employee leaders here that are very passionate about the Titan store, and I think they should have ample opportunity to have at it and make the Titan store something successful, and it's employee-led.
Susie, do you have something you'd like to say?
Not just yet.
Okay. Others, Melanie, then Matt.
Matt can go because I've already asked one.
Okay, Matt.
Thank you. The Oregon State statute calls for a cost-benefit analysis in lieu of an RFP, and it mentions that it mentions protection of jobs, but it doesn't differentiate between full-time and part-time that I know of. So I would like to ask legal counsel, if appropriate, just to give us an opinion, and I think it's prudent that we get that before we take action on this tonight, colleagues, because I would hate for the college to have to undo something because of an inadvertent violation of Oregon State statute. So I would like to respectfully request that our legal counsel give us an opinion about that particular ORS in regards to the definition in state statute of jobs, and I couldn't find any in regards to full-time versus part-time. I don't have it off the top of my head, and I can certainly forward that on if need be. Looks like Brett might have an answer. No, I was up to turn the lights down. I doubt we can find it tonight. If we can't, then I think it would be prudent to table the motion until we do.
Oh, okay, Melanie.
So I still have a couple questions. So I'm not following yet the OER issue. So if I'm understanding right, and I could be completely wrong on this, let's assume we end up with Barnes & Noble because that's the only company I'm aware has come to campus and engaged with us. I could be wrong about that, but assuming we do end up with Barnes & Noble, they have the $25 kind of low cost option, but do they have a zero cost option? And then would faculty be precluded then from on their own picking a zero cost option?
Yeah, no. We anticipate being able to operate exactly the way we have and are currently with regard to faculty having full freedom to choose what they want. What would be available to them as a choice that they don't currently have now because we don't have the Barnes & Noble platform is this particular option, which is Loud Cloud, and they only have I can't remember the exact number of courses they have that they have developed to be delivered in this enhanced way. We would not have to adopt any of it. A faculty member would have that choice. They also have partners with, Barnes & Noble have partnerships with all of the major platforms, OpenStax and so forth, that deliver OER, that house OER anyhow, and we would still have access to all of those as well.
And then I have one other unrelated question. In the public comment, there was discussion on the fact that when somebody's gonna, I think, borrow books right now, they're allowed kind of multiple options in how they pay for those. It ended up being Barnes & Noble. It sounds like they would have to have a credit card. Assuming that's the case with Barnes & Noble, is there anything that the college could do to then help out a student who might be forced into borrowing and doesn't have?
Yeah, I suspect we could. I wasn't aware of that in there. I didn't catch that in the initial proposal.
And in public comment, the credit card statement to what Barnes & Noble is requiring in order to rent a book is what Barnes & Noble reported. So currently we're a little more lenient with that. In our initial negotiations with Barnes & Noble and in the proposal provided to the Board of Education, was $10,000 worth of scholarship money to be dispersed in any way we wanted to. So if we were looking at credit cards being an access issue, the college and the board could decide. We could decide to use that money in that way to make sure that students were able to do that.
Thank you.
So I was at the afternoon session and I had a question that was related to that session and also one of the public comments. Would LCC be able to customize our contract, or would we have to adopt the exact same contract that was adopted by Clackamas, I think it is?
Yeah, and perhaps a better question for legal counsel.
Okay.
When we get to that stage of development with the contract. There is a consortium and there is also an existing state contract. So there's some specific language into what we can alter and what we can't alter. There are also very varying opinions and viewpoints about where that goes, but that'd be something we could explore.
And then another question that was mentioned in public testimony and came up in the forum yesterday was employment of work-study students. And what I heard the person from Seattle say was that they didn't have any work-study students at their store, but they also said they didn't have very many work-study students on their campus. Can you elaborate on how Barnes & Noble responded more broadly to that question about work-study students?
Yeah, they did not have accurate numbers across 800 stores of how many work-study students they have. I did talk to our staff member who runs the federal work-study program, and she was able to access information during that session. And we are able to employ federal work-study students with this arrangement. It has to be in the contract. We have to note approximately how many students we'll use and the wage they would be paid. So that would be language we could possibly we could include in the contract.
And then there was a question about international students, and my recollection was that Barnes & Noble said that they routinely hire international students.
Yeah, and even cited one store where I think up to 80% of the staff were international students.
Paul had something?
Yeah, well, and just for perspective, I think currently now, I think this term we have 2 international students that are working with Barnes & Noble and several work-study students.
Currently working with Barnes & Noble? Or
I'm sorry, currently working with our store.
Thank you. Other comments from the board? Questions?
What does the Titan store currently pay per hour, and what does Barnes & Noble pay per hour?
Yeah, and we could look at our salary schedule for our part-time staff, and it is above minimum wage. And Barnes & Noble currently has varying degrees of staff, but they do have staff at minimum wage.
Okay, we have a motion.
Our average part-time wage is 12.
We have a motion on the floor.
For clarification, that's for the Titan store.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks. And for the record, the ORS I cited earlier is 279B-030.
So Randy.
And I passed that on to Randy.
So this is a complicated statute.
Right.
I think the only thing that I can say at this moment is that it's a procurement statute. It requires a contracting agency to make certain findings before initiating a procurement process that involves contracting outsourcing. So the question would be, I think, for you tonight, whether you want to authorize the college to proceed with that analysis and determine whether outsourcing is permissible under that rule or not.
Thank you.
I guess my
curiosity is, why would it not be allowed for Lane if it's allowed for Clackamas Community
I was wondering
College?
Yeah, because there are some fact-specific findings that are required of the contracting agency by the statute that may be different for Clackamas and Miami.
Even though this was my understanding is that somebody thought this was a consortium arrangement for the state.
Well, you know, that's, that raises an interesting question that I'm not prepared to answer tonight, and that is whether it constitutes procurement to simply sign on to an existing contract, and I can't tell you the answer.
Hence your earlier advice to us.
Hence my earlier advice.
Okay. All right. Lisa?
So if we're signing on to a consortium, doesn't that mean there's very little flexibility in the contract?
Well, how about if we set those questions aside in consideration of Randy's advice, that we authorize the administration to explore that?
Okay.
Are there other questions for, from the board?
It's a clarification.
Yeah.
Point of inquiry, would that take another motion, or should that motion be a motion to table with the charge of motion to table pending further review?
Well, I will defer to my parliamentary expert over there. Do we need to vote no on this motion and reintroduce a new motion, introduce a friendly amendment?
Yeah, I think the parliamentary process would be to make a motion to amend the motion.
Okay.
The other thing that can happen, well, actually, the motion's been seconded, so it can't be withdrawn. So, yeah, make a motion to amend the motion.
Or for clarification purposes, you could just vote this motion down and then make another.
You could do that too.
So we've been advised by council, if we want to pursue this further, that rather than we adopting the motion that says we contract out, that we adopt a motion that says that we authorize the administration to explore contracting out.
Yes.
Is there a friendly amendment? Okay, hearing no friendly amendment, I'm going to have to call for a vote on the motion. Yeah.
I think I just wanted to speak to the motion before I vote on it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to support this motion because I feel like part of the problem with what's happening in this state is that we support corporations that don't invest in our local economies. And I think that we have a bookstore for many years that invested in our local economy. I mean, Marge was just explaining to me yesterday how many years that money went into our general fund. So Barnes & Noble is another corporation that doesn't pay its fair share of taxes. It's part of the problem as to why we don't have adequate funding for education in this state. So I just wanted to be transparent about why I'm voting, how I'm voting.
Yeah. Rosie, then Matt.
I'm prepared to support a staff initiative to balance the Titan store budget with some trepidation. The Titan store staff has not balanced its budget for several years on end. But I'm willing to fall back and let employees have an opportunity to balance that budget as long as there's a tacit agreement among the board members that that's a one-year reprieve. And if at the same time next year we're in a money-losing state, there has to be a change. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the board has to support administration's recommendations about the kinds of changes that are going to allow us to prioritize not raising tuition and so forth. So this is the concern that I have.
Phil?
Not to put anyone on the spot, but if anybody from the Titan store here would like to speak to that.
Yeah, I think the store can balance itself already. I think somebody earlier on stated that it was a very simple proposition for a store in that the largest controllable expense that you have is payroll. And if we're allowed to maneuver our staff so that our expenses are not more than our margin, i.e. the amount of money we make from our sales, then the store can be revenue neutral or it can actually make a little bit of money. But we haven't had that opportunity, and the reason why we see those negative numbers across that middle line is because we were staffed up for a $9 million store as we became an $8 million store, as we became a $5 million store, as we became a $3 million store. And so we were using a strategy of attrition and retirement to balance our largest controllable expense, and that's just ludicrous in the retail world. But we're an educational institution as well, so we want to do a little bit of humanity. So if we were able to do those moves when we saw our enrollment drastically declining, we would not have a line that looks like that. But it was not done for whatever reason, and then now we're in the situation we are. However, the proposal that I gave you does show that if we pay particular attention to our part-time staff and do the reductions that we've already done, the store can be about net revenue neutral and possibly even make a little bit of money. But that is also predicated on how course materials progresses. And the OER movement is really gaining ground. And so we're going to find that 70% of our sales are from digital and regular course materials. Sorry, course materials are 70% of our sales. And that trend line is not necessarily going to change drastically. So.
Thank you, Tony. I'd like to call the vote.
Well, I have questions first. I need a clarification of what "we're not allowed" means. I need to understand what the barriers are before, I mean, if there's labor contract barrier, I mean, what stands in the way of the two business functions that we're operating on this campus, operating like a business? I mean, you need to have the freedom to flex. So what's standing in the way? Is there a labor contract? What is it?
These are contracted positions that we kept in the Fund 6 accounts and with an attrition strategy. The attrition strategy did not keep up with the revenue. The revenue is down 20% compared to last fiscal year. The estimated operating loss prior to the admin recovery of $500,000 is $1.47 million. What we're looking at is a proposal, and Tony and his team have done great work, and I think with some of the changes we've made, they can't come closer. What we're looking at is a one-year situation suggested by the board as a proposal that might get us some money or that might end up positive, whereas if we were to be able to contract with an outside provider, we'd have a guaranteed amount. So we would have to budget this realistically, and a realistic guaranteed amount is something I can put into a budget. A forecast, we might have separate forecasts, and ultimately there'll be the administration forecast, which will be based on actuals and not aspirations.
No, it doesn't really answer my question. I need to know if there are provisions in our current labor contract that preclude food services or the Titan store from flexing the way a business needs to be able to flex given economic conditions and the market.
There are contractual considerations that allow us to move staff.
That do allow us to move. So we could have been making these changes all along and we chose not to? Is that what we're saying?
Yes. We did not reduce the size of that staff.
Okay, so we chose to lose money.
I don't think that's fair.
Well, I'm not trying to be unfair, I'm trying to understand, Brian. Yeah. We made a conscious choice that resulted in losing money every year for multiple years. Is that an accurate statement?
It's a factor in the overall cost.
Okay.
Okay, I have Susie in line. Susie?
Thank you. I'd like to say that I think Lisa's comments on corporations are spot on. I like Rosie's idea of you know, a one-year trial. I think that has merit. However, I truly believe there will be significant negative impact with a budget decision when we do our budget decision making, unless choices are made between college services and dealing with tuition. I mean, it's not even pick one, it's pick 3 out of 4, or 4 out of 4, or half of them. It's a terrible situation that we're now in, and the impact is going to be, what employees do we keep to do what? To provide services for students, to provide classes for students. So, anyway, those are my comments on this.
Melanie, and then I've got myself in the queue.
So I support Rosie's suggestion that we give this a year. I would even be fine making the vote tonight on a motion that says if within a year the operating income isn't positive, that it's an automatic that we're gonna do outsourcing. But I do support this idea of giving this more time to see if the plans that have been brought forward have the opportunity to succeed, understanding that then if there is additional losses, that is going to hit then our reserves even further. But I do like that suggestion.
The vote the college is asking for is whether to outsource or not on this service. Additional information can be provided outside of that vote, but that's the vote that the college is requesting.
So my comment is that, and it alludes to a comment I made during the tuition conversation. If we can't make a decision on tuition, and then the next thing that comes down the line, we can't make a decision to follow the college's recommendation, and then the next thing that comes down the line, we have paralyzed the administration and the college by not making decisions. I operated auxiliaries for over 40 years in my career. They were all self-op. I hated the idea of contracting out. We don't have a choice. I don't see that we have a choice. We have much harder cuts to make than this one. And if we can't make this one, I don't know how we're going to make the other decisions. So I think we have to make a decision tonight to ask the administration to continue to explore contracting out. Matt and Rosie.
I appreciate your point of view, Mike, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that's been said, but I think that at least I'm somewhat confused about the motion. There's a request that was made by legal counsel, and I thought it was pretty clear that we need to make sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed in regards to a cost-benefit analysis. And I would be far more comfortable with tabling this and seeing that cost-benefit analysis before taking any sort of action. And the motion that's on the table is an action, and then there's an amendment attached to it that's worded in a way that I cannot support. So I'm asking colleagues just to vote down the first motion.
I don't remember an amendment.
There's no amendment, so it's just, so the motion, could the motion be repeated, please?
The motion is to accept the administration's recommendation to outsource.
Okay, and I caution colleagues taking that road because we may be in violation of ORS if we do.
Brett?
Just for parliamentary procedure's sake, you could amend the motion and just add pending legal review. So you allow the staff to move forward with work, but have legal review happen at the same time.
I propose to withdraw my motion.
You could, because I seconded it.
Can you withdraw your second?
Can I withdraw my second? Can we just vote no and then be done with it really quick?
I would.
I want to make a different motion about a 1 year.
Can we just vote?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to to contract out our bookstore.
That's what the motion was, right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I think we are prepared to vote.
Okay, Carrasco,
Sorry.
Just say no.
No, I just, what was it again, the motion?
I'll accept the recommendation to outsource.
No.
Mike Hext,
No.
Matt Key,
No.
Susie Johnston,
No.
Lisa Fragola,
No.
Melanie Munzer,
No.
Rosie Pryor.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move the administration be directed to maintain current Titan Store operations for a period of 1 year pending further fiscal review. And if there are further losses, that administration be required to immediately begin steps to outsource.
Motion on the floor, seconded by Melanie. Okay, discussion.
Yes, please, from Susie. I like the idea of a year, but it puts us right back in the same boat we're in tonight. So I wonder if we can't shorten that timeline just a little bit, maybe 9 months or 10 months. That puts us in a better position when it comes to preparing budget material.
Right.
The question for the board to consider was whether to outsource the service or to retain the service. The operation of the service, you've granted the president the power to do that.
With respect,
With the staff.
the board has the power to provide direction to the president about certain things, and this is an example of one of those.
Okay, other discussion?
Well, I like the motion up until the part where we say we're gonna outsource, like automatically we're bound to that. I know it may still lead to that, but I still wanna have the opportunity to have ample review over that 1 year. And then we get to that, we will make a motion then, you know. I'm certainly not looking to drag this out, but I don't want that as part of the motion, to be honest.
You can amend.
Okay, I'd like to amend, withdrawing the wording about outsourcing and immediately tying us to it.
I'm cool with that.
Okay, could you try to restate the motion then without that?
I move the administration be directed to maintain current Titan Store operation. Isn't that what we're saying?
But with still a financial review in a year, just not automatic.
With not in a year, with ongoing financial
Yeah,
review.
yeah. Yearly ongoing financial review.
And the board will call the question then. Is that anything in the motion? Somebody,
You have it?
Yeah, I think we can, and we have the prerogative to jump back in whenever we want to.
So you're thinking we don't need that in the motion, is that what you're saying?
I think that's.
I just like putting it in the motion because it forces us to do it.
So I second the motion, the new motion.
Okay, President Hamilton.
May I respectfully recommend you consider quarterly updates so that you don't wait a year.
Oh, absolutely, that's why I said ongoing, I don't want to wait a year either.
I would even say quarterly.
Yeah.
Matt?
Question. It's similar to the tuition conversation, so I apologize. And sorry for derailing this whole thing with this ORS. I think it would still warrant investigating ORS 279B.030 because I just, should we go down that road, it would be a disaster to undo something or inadvertently violate Oregon state statute. My question is,
I don't think that the college has said recommended anything other than to comply with the law.
right. My question is about the impact that this decision would have, continuing down the path the suggested path with Tony's restructuring. How would this affect potential academic programmatic cuts if we do not partner with a for-profit corporation?
So the impact we were able to share earlier of maintaining internal bookstore and food service functions has a $1.1 million impact on the budget. Those are our projections, not the projections of the department or others. Those are the college budget office projections that say if we choose to maintain these services, it will be $1.1 million. And those will be moved to the general fund, which we have to do at this point.
So
Can I ask a clarifying question on that?
yes.
Because, okay, and part of this is because it's, 10:20 and my brain stopped working, but the 1.1 that's in here, can you go back to the page 19, the Titan Store report? So I'm not understanding, so we have negative operating income this year of 258,000. I don't understand how that turns into the 1.1. What is the 1.1 that's covered in that?
Combined with food? Yeah, this can be an information request and we can get it to you.
Okay, yeah, I would like to understand
It's the total of both operations, and there are elements to that projection. That's a projection. This would be one piece of that projection, but I'm not going to pull that out of 10. I don't have it in my head now.
Because we don't have to pick up, the college isn't picking up everything, we're just picking up the loss.
We'll get you the detail.
Right? Okay.
I would like to say that I'm going to vote against this motion. I think it's very clear that we have to make very hard decisions about cutting things, and that we're going to have to decide things much more difficult than this to cut. And if we can't cut this, I don't know how we're going to cut anything. That's whether we increase our tuition 0.0002% or 0% or $2.35. So I think it would be most prudent for this board to adopt the recommendation to pursue outsourcing. So I'm going to vote against the motion for that reason.
Call the question.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Looks like we are. Would you go ahead and call the vote, call the roll?
Bill Carrasco,
Yes.
Mike Eister,
No.
Matt Keating,
No.
Lisa Fragola,
Yes.
Melanie Munzer,
Yes.
Rosie Pryor,
Yes.
and Susie Johnston.
No, I agree with Mike.
So the motion passes if I counted that right?
Yeah.
And so our next action is
You need to move on to food services.
food service. Okay.
My motion.
Yeah, that was it.
Try that again. I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of administration to outsource food service operations.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor, discussion. Phil?
So this is, I think it's the wording that's getting me, but I think this gives us an opportunity. I don't see it as outsourced, I see it more as locally sourced.
Yeah.
I see it more as an equity issue. There are a lot of businesses that are starting up, a lot of food trucks. This gives us a lot of opportunity to actually connect to the local economic region in food services as a whole in Lane County and really make a name for ourselves as an incubator, right? You have Huerto de la Familia, for example, if we're talking equity. I serve there on the board, and they are an amazing group, nonprofit. And they are a business incubator for our Latinx families, you know? Great tamales, great salsas, great panuchos, great sopes, you name it. And they teach them the business sense they require for them to actually let their local businesses thrive. And I think we have a great incubator here as well, and not only for folks in our culinary arts programs, but also any other groups or underserved populations or underrepresented populations in the food community to come in and provide some of that, you know, excellent cuisine that we so desire. If you look at Main Street, in Springfield is thriving. I mean, shoot, they have an Ethiopian cuisine location now, right? Like, there's all kinds of stuff that we could play around with, and we provide more options to our students as well. And I personally am ready to think of it in terms of locally sourced. I'm not interested in inviting Starbucks or McDonald's or, no, I'm talking about local businesses. That is still giving back to our community. And that's...
Would you like to make a friendly amendment?
Yeah, I mean, so the first amendment was...
The
Oh, I like to,
outsource.
Okay, the friendly amendment is that we refer to this as locally sourced, right? So we'd like to locally source our food services to help the thriving, you know, economic engine in food services in Lane County.
Okay, that was a friendly amendment. Does that require a second? Does that just require approval from the motion maker?
There needs to be a second before there's an amendment.
Okay. So is there a second to that friendly
So
amendment?
I second.
No, you made the friendly amendment.
No, a second to the first amendment.
So what happens to the friendly amendment? Do I have to agree?
It's a motion to amend.
So does it, I'm asking you,
There's a vote.
what qualifies?
There's a vote on the motion to amend.
Does the motion to amend require a second?
Yes.
Okay, we have not had a second on the motion to amend.
Can I second?
You made the motion.
You made the motion.
I'll second.
No, the second.
Okay, seconded by Melanie. Okay, so then our first vote will be to vote on the amendment. And the amendment is to outsource, but to have it be locally sourced.
Not to, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So to locally
You're
sourced.
saying no McDonald's, no Burger King, no Taco Bell?
Yeah, it's local.
Discussion on that amendment.
I think if I hear my colleague correct, it's a trigger word when you hear outsource, and I share that. I hear you. So I think his motion is to, your intent is to remove not only the language but the intent of outsourcing with a larger corporation.
Yeah.
Okay.
By removing outsource and implementing local source, it totally gives us a direction, a very clear direction of what we're trying to do.
Okay, Melanie?
So it's actually unclear to me, do we even have any information though to know if there would be local businesses that would then want to do that? So that's what's unclear. So I don't...
Brian, I thought that was part of your proposal originally.
Part of our proposal was to engage a local industry, yes.
And I took from what I read that you had confidence that there would be enough of that around that we could meet the need.
We've had inquiry within the community that would represent, you know, the ability to be able to do that. Although, you know, to Melanie's point, that's not confirmed.
Okay. Matt? Oh, sorry, Phil?
I will add, and this is anecdotal, Brian, I'll admit, I personally, well, also personal experience, I've seen that there's pop-ups, right, in certain markets, and they'd love a location to go and sell to local folks, right? So I think we'll be pleasantly surprised with what's to offer out there.
Okay. Other discussion? Susie, anything? Lisa, you have something?
I guess I just was wondering about the proposal that we received from food services. Wasn't this also part of their proposal?
Yes.
So
Was it what now?
I'm wondering about that this was, so who's going to manage all of this, right? I seem to recall that the proposal that we received from food services was also that they wanted to implement this kind of idea. So I saw it there, and I guess I didn't pick it up in another previous proposal.
Observation. I mean, I guess my reaction to that is if the board directs administration to outsource to locally owned businesses, it's up to administration to determine how it's going to implement that, whether it be the specific proposal that the existing food service management has made or something else. But yeah, I mean, to me, that's a little into the weeds. As far
Okay,
as I'm
thank you for
concerned.
that clarification.
Okay. Susie, you got anything?
No, just that, if we can do local first and deal with the rest of it, I'm fine, so.
Okay. So, I'm a little unclear, Randy, whether we really have two motions or whether it's, the amendment is almost a separate standalone motion.
So ultimately, it only matters if there's a dispute. But given where we are and the nature of the discussions, my advice is to vote on the motion to amend and then vote on the motion that's left.
Okay, all right. Okay, so are we ready to vote on the motion to amend?
Can we restate it, please?
Okay, the motion, Phil.
So I'd like to add now, given the something that we did talk about, so here it goes. So I'd like to amend the original motion to actually state we agree to locally source our food services and to direct staff to engage food services here on campus to see how that might work.
I'm not going to tell the president how to do her job.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, can you make an amendment to an amendment?
Well, that was kind of an amendment to amendment, I think. That's not what the original amendment was.
It isn't.
That's not what you seconded.
It's not what was seconded.
So what I heard on the amendment was locally
Do you want me to
sourced.
read it, or?
No, please.
Okay, he said the amendment was that we refer to this as locally sourced for food services in Lane County. And then, no.
Thank you. So that is the motion on the floor.
Okay.
What?
We'll stick with that.
I think what's unclear to me from the language in the motion, though, is that it doesn't, the way I'm hearing it now is, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's gonna save any money. Like, couldn't it be, that's why I was saying an amendment to the amendment, that I mean, I don't know that we actually should be doing this at 10:35 at night when we've been here for this long. This is a
But are
hugely
you
important
reflecting on what we
decision.
said earlier about Titan Store? You want there to be no money loss?
Yeah, so the way that I'm hearing that now is that it could be they outsource and then it ends up costing us more money because at that point in time the priority becomes local as opposed to cost saving. So that's why I was thinking like an amendment to the amendment where it's about cost savings. If we're going to outsource to save money, it has to be outsourced locally type of thing.
Right.
And just to be clear, the projection includes us internally hosting, maintaining those services. We will get you a detailed list of what that looks like, but it's $1.16 million if we continue to host those two services. So that's what we're putting into the budget if we choose to internally host both of those things. We have some optimistic projections. These are the college projections. We can maintain both of these services, but that's the impact. So if you're telling us you want us to do these things but not lose money, we're telling you now we are projecting a cost impact by internally hosting those. So it would be counter to the information we provided you.
Go ahead.
I think what we're talking about is not internally hosting food service. We are talking about outsourcing it, which I know is a bad word, but we're talking about it going to local businesses as opposed to corporations.
This is, yeah, and what I had envisioned is when I myself was a student, there were food trucks that would come in here, and there were burgers, and there were like different little options, and I'd like to see something a little more consistent, right? But that was in addition to the services that we had inside the cafeteria. But it was great to have those options, right? So I just imagine a lot of other food trucks that are willing to come out here and provide that service. I mean, I can imagine that it's very minimal cost for us to like plug those food trucks in and maybe run water, I don't know.
Can I clarify, Phil, then are you talking about shutting down food service and replacing it with food trucks? Or are you talking about maintaining food service and then inviting food trucks, which would then peel off more business from food service and make the situation worse?
So I had understood that we were running deep in the red, and I remember what was the number in food services?
It's a loss of 420,000.
Yeah. So yeah, I knew it was a lot, and so basically I thought this is. I mean, Mike's alluded to this. This is where we're going to have to make one of the hard decisions. So I don't see it so much as outsourcing, but locally sourcing, going to these food trucks and saying, hey, there's a whole population here that wants to get fed, come out here and feed them.
No, but what I'm not understanding is what is happening then with the food service as it currently exists if you're adding food trucks in. I'm not following what you're saying.
Yeah.
Can
I
you
thought
say
we
why I'm
were,
confused?
yeah, it's basically replacing food service.
That's what I took the meaning of that motion to be. We would replace our local food service staff with locally sourced food.
Then we would just have empty.
Yeah.
Or you could conceivably put people into those menus. Yeah. Matt?
Colleagues, we're getting way into the weeds, and it's unnecessary, and what you're describing actually is outsourcing. So, like, let's be clear. It's what it is. I hear that.
It's local business,
I know
not corporation.
Well, there are local corporations as well. But I bring it up because A, it's 10:35. B, there's a motion on the table to restructure this, whatever language you want to use, outsource, insource, locally sourced. And it's a balancing act, and we have a fiduciary responsibility. We all know that. And I've never, in my time on this board, voted for academic programmatic cuts or any cut to a program, and it pains me to consider doing so here because of the balancing act in order to keep academic programs afloat. This is not hard, or this is not easy. This is hard for me to consider. And I see the looks on your face. I see you. I see the pain. So it's late. I hear you. Thank you. My point is that the amendment may be superfluous. I suggest voting against the amendment. I take that back. I suggest voting for the amendment because it underscores our values. And then, sadly, colleagues, I suggest that we take a very serious look at this restructuring, and I say that with great pain in my heart. But let's move forward, please, and let's tackle that amendment. I suggest we pass the amendment, and the hardest thing I've ever had to do at this board
Call the
will be
question.
I was in the middle of a sentence. I appreciate it. Thank you. The hardest thing I'll ever have to do on this board is to suggest colleagues pass this tonight.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote on the amendment. Would you call the roll?
So we will, Bill Carrasco,
Yes.
Mike Ister,
Yes.
Matt Keating,
Yes.
Susie Johnston,
Yes.
Lisa Fragler,
Yes.
Melanie Munzer,
Yes.
Rosie Pryor.
No.
Okay, then we have a main motion on the floor, which is to outsource food service.
It's an amended motion.
An amended motion to locally sourced food service. Do we really need to vote on that again?
Yeah. And
Okay. Okay, are we ready to vote on that?
Yes.
No.
Oh, well, we have a discussion.
Colleagues, this is a balancing act. If we cast this vote tonight, I implore you to look at tuition as a balancing act as well, and embrace what I'm embracing tonight, which is a compromised solution. So we need to find some middle ground, and this is my attempt to reach some sort of of compromised solution to prevent further cuts at the